going on, everyone? I'm going into work early just because I have to once a month. But anyway, so a couple of questions on a video that I posted actually just yesterday. That right there was a Bath Township cop right there just sitting there. That's exactly what I was going to talk about. So I did a video where I blurred out the entire windshield, basically, when I did my 0 to 100. And there's several reasons for that. The first reason is that YouTube has become such a popular platform for videos, racing, and things like that, that authorities are actually finding people based on their location. They check out their other YouTube videos and they find out where approximately they live. And it's not that difficult. I mean, if somebody really wanted to know where I live, they would be able to find out where I live. I mean, that's just basically it. So if a cop saw me do a bunch of 0 to 60s, 0 to 100s, top speed runs, or whatever, I'm basically recording my guilt, recording breaking the law. It's no different than if you were to record yourself breaking into somebody's house or murdering somebody or anything else like that. You are basically recording yourself in the act of committing the crime, which can be used against you. So let's say that I'm doing a top speed run and it's clear that I'm in wherever, I mean on the highway or some back road or whatever like that, then I could be prosecuted for that. But what's happening is more and more cases of this are actually starting to happen. And the most famous one was a long time ago where this guy in this Corvette was selling his Corvette, and he put a video on YouTube to demonstrate the capabilities of that Corvette. And he did he got up to like 160 or 170 miles per hour on the highway. I can't remember exactly the details, but needless to say, he was brought to jail for it, and he got a felony over the deal. There's some deer right there. When there's one, there's many. So he's in deep crap about that because he recorded himself. Basically, he connected himself a lot more than most people would, because he attached it to, an ad in the paper and so on. So he was basically throwing out, hey, this is me, watch me do this. Here's my address, phone number, etc. Here's the make, model, la la la. So he was basically throwing himself into jail, okay? But that's starting to happen more and more. I mean, you think about it. There's fewer and fewer law enforcement officers out there. Cities, states, townships, whatever you want to look at it, they're cutting back. And they can't get everybody on the road. In the old-fashioned days of just sitting on some side of the road or whatever, nailing people as they're coming across, officers don't have the time to do that anymore. They just don't. And yes, of course, you still see that. I'm not saying that it doesn't exist anymore. It certainly does. Just not as much. And if the police can use the resources elsewhere, where they can just log into a computer and look at some videos that you shot and say, well, geez, oh Pete, he just did 100 miles an hour in a 35, and we know who it is. Well, that's admission of guilt right there. We've got the evidence. So, basically, unless you're recording yourself specifically at the track, and I know somebody's going to say, oh, well, blurring it out as admission of guilt. Well, no, it's not admission of guilt, because it cannot be proven where you are at. So simply blurring out an image doesn't necessarily constitute guilt, and a cop would have to, a police agency or FBI or whatever would have to do some serious investigation, some serious work and resources to figure out exactly where you are. In the video that I posted yesterday, somebody would have to sit down for countless hours and say, there is no doubt in my mind that this guy here was on a public road in such and such town where the speed limit was this, and they were definitely breaking the law. There would have to be undeniable evidence that that was the case. And there would be a lot of resources going into it just to figure that out. Now, let's say that I hit somebody, crashed into a tree or whatever. Then obviously the investigation will go a little bit deeper as to figure out where exactly I was at. Yada, yada. But I'm minding my own business, and I do a 0 to 100 or whatever. I could be at the track. I could be on a private back road. I could be on the moon. I mean, that's one of those things where if a cop was sitting down looking at that, they'd have to be like, man, it's so blurred out, I don't know where this guy is at, but I'm definitely going to do my investigation work. No, they're not looking for videos like that. They're looking for passing a speed limit sign. They're looking for passing a road marker. They're looking for anything that can say undeniably, this is where you were at and you were breaking the law. So, by blurring out my view, basically, I am not admitting guilt, and there would have to be a serious investigation to figure out exactly where I was at to be anywhere proven that, no, I was not in some back alley or not in some private track or whatever. Now, you could go even deeper and say, well, all they had to do was ask you and do an investigation. Well, at that point, you can just say, hey, this is where I was at. Now prove I wasn't there. That's it. There's several roads that I know of in this area that are at least a mile long that have no houses on them, that are just fields or tracks or whatever that I could say that I was at. And there's no way that they could prove that otherwise. So, I'll continue this conversation. Looks like a couple trees fell down. I'll continue this conversation after work. So, continuing on what I was talking about on my way to work. The thing is, this is my opinion. This is not what I would necessarily admit to do, but this is just my opinion. I would never race anyone. Okay? Number one, if my kids were in the car. I would if my wife was in the car and she said that it was okay. My kids were in the car, my family's in the car, that's a big no-no. Definitely not going to. Number two, if it's a 2-lane road, not gonna happen. Not gonna do it. Because you risk a head-on collision depending on who's in the wrong lane. Number three, around a lot of houses. Neighborhood like this. Let's just say that this is not a 2-lane road, it's a 4-lane. There's cars all over. There could be kids, bikers, anything. Most likely in a residential area like this, there's going to be people near the road. Let's just say that a group of kids are playing basketball off to the right. The basketball runs out into the road and a kid goes and chases after it. You know how kids are. They don't tend to think about the consequences of running out into the road. They just do it because they're in the moment. So you're going 140 miles an hour down the road and a kid runs out in front of you. How are you going to stop? You're not going to. So in that situation, I would never ever race anyone or do a top speed run. The only time that I would ever do something like that is if the road was to myself and it was a highway. I mean, that's really the only place that I would ever attempt to top out my car or drive really fast over the speed limit. Now, you've seen me in the past. I know it because I got my videos up. You see me in the past do some quick driving over the speed limit for a little bit. We're not talking about 50 miles over the speed limit or anything else like that. We're talking about maybe 15, 20, maybe 25 over the speed limit. Not in a residential area. I would never do 50 and a 25. That's in a residential area. That's ridiculous. And anybody who does that is just stupid. But you guys have seen me like up and down this road do, you know, the speed limit's 40, and I know that I've done 60 or 65 through there being pissed off at something. Like yesterday, that car that I was behind that wouldn't go, I got it up to, I believe it was about 61 before I let off on it. So I was doing 21 over the speed limit. That's fine. But there were no houses right there. And if there's other cars around, people around, whatever, I don't do anything like that. That's just ridiculously stupid. It just is. It's dumb. Because, you know, you risk. I mean, that's involuntary manslaughter, and it's especially, it could be, you know, it could be manslaughter or murder if you are driving recklessly, knowingly driving recklessly. It's one thing if you lose control of your vehicle because of ice or snow or whatever, you know, that's involuntary manslaughter, vehicular manslaughter. But, you know, if you're, you know, speed racing, you're doing 150 down a 55 or something, and you kill somebody, then, you know, that's basically murder. But my dad, he had a 68 or a 69 Corvette. And it had I think it was it wasn't a 460, it was bigger than that. It wasn't a 496. I can't remember what it was, but anyways, he used to be able to top that thing out at about 150 miles per hour. And there were several times when he would come to a red light or something like that, and somebody next to him would want to race. Now, granted, this is the late 70s, okay? This is the late 70s, and so, you know, there wasn't as much worry about that kind of stuff. There weren't as many houses and things like that. You know, things weren't as congested, and he lived out in the country. So being at a stoplight out in the country, yeah, you could light them up and nobody would care. And even if a cop did catch you, they would most likely just tell you to, you know, basically cut it out. Whereas today, it's like you're in jail. So my dad used to race a lot, but anytime somebody would come up next to him and want to race, if there was anyone else in the car with him, then he wouldn't. If there was anyone else in the car, in the person's car that wanted to race, he wouldn't. And he would flat out say that he wouldn't. But if there was nobody in the cars, and it was just them two, there was no opposing traffic, you know, the way he looked at it is if he puts him, you know, if he blows out a tire and he ends up in a tree and kills himself, that's fine. As long as it's just him and only him that's getting hurt, then that's his problem. And there were a couple of times he told me that where he would be racing, he'd get his Corvette up to about 110, 120, and then there would be a car coming, and he would immediately stop. He would he would slow right down, and that would be it. He would never do it where there were homes. There would always be, you know, areas out in the country, fields and so on. So if he makes the mistake of going off the road, then he's the one who's dead, not anyone else. And that's just the way that it was. And I feel the exact same way about it. really think you're going to get any faster, this light's going to change, no doubt. I hope it does. Impatient old bastard. Ha ha, I'm surprised you didn't go through it. I am shocked. Anyways, so my dad had, you know, you could argue, and I'm sure that some of you out there are going to make comments about this. You could argue that just racing, whether there's anyone around or not, is stupid and dumb and risky. And it's snowing out right now, if you can believe that. So yes, I understand that. Okay, there's a risk in anything. I mean, there's a risk that somebody's off into the woods and they jump out. I mean, that's risky. There's always a risk in everything. But you minimize those risks based on where you're at in those situations. And it's just, you know, my opinions probably don't matter to anyone, and you can have your own opinion. I'm not going to think anything of it. You have your opinion, I have my opinion. That's just the way that it is. But the reason I got on this topic to begin with was being on this road right here. And I didn't do my 0 to 100 on this road here. It was actually on a highway, but I didn't want anyone to know specifically where I was at. But the point is, the whole reason that I'm getting into this topic is because Meridian Township, our local police department, is starting to watch roads more based on speeding complaints and so on. And they're telling people that they need to slow way down. Like right now we're coming up on a 25 corner. My car is more than capable of taking this corner at 25, but they're actually pulling people over for taking it any more than 25. Now, those signs right there are recommended limits. And if I had a bus or something like that coming around that corner, yeah, it's going to be hard to turn. But this car, I've taken that corner at 55 before, going the other way, and had absolutely no problems getting around it. I guess I'm just throwing around, sort of my opinion on why I'm going to start blocking my shots so that you don't see things like speed limit signs or locators. I could be on the track, maybe I'm not on the track, but people do really dumb things and they put it up on YouTube and they end up going to jail for it. And I'm not going to have some cop who doesn't have any time on his hands watching my video and saying, well, gee, I know exactly where that's at, and now I've got you caught red-handed, you're going to jail. So that's basically it, really. That's in a nutshell. That's kind of it, and that's how I feel about it. So anyways,